They stretch for miles. White sands, turquoise waters, a haven for tourists who come for pristine beaches to dive through the most breathtaking coral reefs, explore mangroves, and soak in the river limes that have become a staple for locals. The economies of this chain of islands are married to offerings to foreign guests who come to enjoy the sea, sand, and natural beauty. But over the past 20 years, a disturbing, filthy, and wayward phenomena has dotted the landscape of thousands of beaches. Plastic, used, indiscriminately dumped. They enter various watercourses and eventually mushroom into floating barges of waste, traversing various coastlines and eventually punctuating, albeit polluting our beaches. The Caribbean Sea is the lifeblood of over 7,000 islands, supporting 37 distinct economies that are the most tourism dependent in the world. Oceans and their processes are responsible for the planet's rainwater, weather, climate, coastlines, oxygen, and food resources on land and sea. In the wider Caribbean region, especially in small island developing states, marine ecosystems provide food, livelihoods, and income to over 100 million people through fisheries, tourism, coastal protection, and transportation. This lucrative resource, however, is threatened by changes in an underwater environment that, for far too many of us, remains out of sight, out of mind.
Over the last couple of years, we have noticed that the amount of pollution, marine pollution, has increased drastically. The waste that gets into our waters, it entails a wide variety of materials, including plastics, general household items. It also includes solid and liquid waste, including sewage, and also chemical waste from farmlands as well.
In 2003, we did a waste characterization study, and that study realized that plastics was in the region of 7%. In terms of residential waste, it makes up 7% of that waste. In 2018, plastics moved from 7% to 22%.
For the chemical pollution, we have noticed an increase in algal blooms. These chemicals come from the fertilizers used on farms. When the fertilizers are washed into the rivers, they eventually would lead to the sea. This increase in nutrients has caused eutrophication, which is algal blooms. And this means that there is an increase or a bloom in the algal and macroalgae that is in the water.
Solid waste and wastewater are the most pervasive sources of marine pollution in the region. They are projected to increase as populations, coastal cities, and tourism continue to grow. 80% of marine population results from direct or indirect discharge of solids and liquids from land-based sources such as rivers, outflow of waterways, agricultural runoff, and infrastructure. The rest enter the oceans through petroleum exploration and production, shipping, discarded fishing gear, and the atmosphere. Cities, towns, and villages along the coast are particularly problematic sources of untreated wastewater and litter due to inadequate waste collection, disposal, and treatment facilities. Improving waste management systems remains a major challenge in the Caribbean region. While plastic represents only 12% of the solid waste generated in the Caribbean, it is a crucial component of marine and coastal litter. Plastic is resistant to degradation relative to other forms of solid waste, remaining in the environment for years. Up to 80% of the litter found in our oceans is made of plastic. Caribbean data from beach and coastal cleanups in 2017 indicate that plastic beverage bottles alone amounted to 21% of the items recorded. When other forms of plastic items are counted, 35% of all items were single-use plastic. Poor household collection service is among the reasons why plastics enter the marine environment.
The St. Lucia Solid Waste Management Authority chose to focus on the communities that surround the Castries Basin. Now, when you go into these communities, you would realize that there are roads running through, but a lot of the settlements are accessed by small roads that transition into footpaths and steps. So it challenges waste collection. When you look at how waste is currently managed in those communities, you would see that there are what are called, people call them garbage chutes, where these three-sided concrete structures on the side of the road, or you would see the large bins, the 660-liter bins on the side of the road. And the community members are expected to bring their waste out on collection day and place them in the chute or in the bin. You just have to drive through any of these communities and you would see that the locations of these bins and chutes, you find that you get drive-by disposal. So persons drive through the communities, whether they are residents or small businesses, because small businesses are required to take their waste up to Dayglow or to pay somebody to take it. And to avoid that cost, they will take it and they will drive through the community, and they will, any community, they will drop it next to a bin, maybe on their way home or, whatever is convenient to them. But the system is not set up to accommodate those volumes of waste. So it's quickly overwhelmed. You also find that persons within the community do not comply with the days. So if they're told that their waste collection is Tuesday and Friday, if their bag is full on Wednesday, they're going to take it out and put it.
An estimated 322,745 tons of plastic go uncollected each year across selected Caribbean countries. Of these, 22% of households dispose of waste in waterways or on land where it can be washed into the waterways. To combat this deleterious effect of plastic and marine litter, the OECS has implemented a special initiative with the St. Lucia Solid Waste Management Authority to build resilience in the Eastern Caribbean.
The OECS recognizes that there are a number of issues that have hampered effective waste management in its member states, and many of these issues are very common among the states, such as looking to reduce waste, recycle waste, looking to manage dump sites more effectively, waste diversion issues, etc. And the OECS looks at this point in time to really take a regional approach to managing waste, especially when it comes to recyclables such as plastics. We recognize that there is a heavy cost in terms of transportation, or if a country was interested in recycling at a national level, there is a very heavy cost. And there is strength in numbers, of course, and therefore some of these actions, such as transportation, such as recycling, can occur at a regional level where all the countries contribute to one mechanism, one transport mechanism, or one recycling type initiative.
So what the REMLIT national component in St. Lucia is seeking to do is to infiltrate those communities with collection services. So where the large refuse collection vehicle cannot reach, they will use smaller vehicles, what they call satellite vehicles, to go into the relatively small, steep roads that exist and collect waste door to door, right? Also on the main road, the large vehicles, instead of just servicing the communal waste location, will service persons door to door, curbside. And then as you go deeper into the communities where the vehicles cannot reach, We're looking at a system of using persons preferably drawn from the community itself to collect waste and bring it down to the closest place where a vehicle can pick it up.
One being dealing with the enabling environment, the policy and legal bucket. The other being on-the-ground interventions to actually physically deal with the issue. And the third being awareness so that we can change minds and practices.
The blue economy is the overall contribution of the oceans to economies that addresses environmental and ecological sustainability of the oceans, and the ocean economy as a growth opportunity for both developed and developing countries. A growing number of Caribbean countries are moving towards national development strategies that are strongly underpinned by ocean resources. These countries believe that a more sustainable blue growth-based strategy could help the broader policy objectives of the Sustainable Development Goals, including poverty reduction, food security, energy security, disaster risk reduction, climate change mitigation, and ocean conservation. Pollution of the marine environment, however, poses a significant risk to the economic benefits to be generated by the region's ocean economy.
So after a storm or heavy rainfalls in general, the department has noticed an increase in plastic waste and plastic pollution in the water. So this includes an increase in plastic bottles, plastic containers, and just different waste materials entering our marine environment. When this waste enters the environment, especially the plastic materials, they either float or they sink. And when they sink, they affect the different marine life underwater, including our coral reefs. They break up some of the coral features, the seagrass beds, sometimes they kill the seagrass, and also when the waste comes down in the rivers, they impact the mangrove environments. When they enter the mangrove environments, they could either kill the trees. When they become entangled in their root systems, they could kill the fish and other marine life.
In 2016, United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon opined that the findings of the first World Ocean Assessment indicate that the ocean's carrying capacity is near or at its limit, and that urgent action on a global scale is needed to protect the world's oceans from the many pressures they face. Anthony Leos runs Sea Life Paradise, a dive operation in St. Lucia, which takes thousands of oxygenated guests to explore the island's ocean floor. He records the disturbing trend that Ban Ki-moon spoke of, and he understands the urgency for a call to action.
After just a heavy rain, you'd encounter on your next dive tires, refrigerators, and of course, the most common one is plastic bottles. Most of the coral life is within 35 to 40 feet, in that region, and that's where it stays. Eventually, it will start choking the coral. You will see more examples of coral bleaching, and then the silt now will start to kill the coral as well. And then there is very regularly what we call an algae bloom. So algae starts growing on the plastic and eventually finds its way onto the reef and starts stifling the reef. Generally, you will come across turtles tangled up in nets or polythene bags, which are clear, and just a few hours of starvation of oxygen would kill the turtles. And one of the biggest features of our Caribbean diving is diving for turtles. So we partnered with Reef Alliance, and we started doing underwater cleanup at World International Ocean Day. So we organized an underwater cleanup when we saw the amount of garbage. We also wanted to tag, so to know where the source came from. Because we know that the ocean on its own could not develop that kind of garbage. So by collecting it, tagging it, and bagging it, we were able to trace it back to the origin. So I started this in 2011. By 2012, I had won the Reef Alliance Award. did the same thing in 2013 and the same thing in 2014. So on most of those outings, I would have collected about 900 pounds of garbage on that day. Tagged it, 90% of it would have been plastics. So you had from plastics, condoms, stoves, refrigeration equipment, beds, you name it. And I was able to tag some of them as having originated from Martinique. So that gave us an indication of how far downstream or down ocean when you actually dispose of garbage it could get. But by 2014, it just dawned on me that I was getting an award for collecting garbage. And here we are marketing St. Lucia as simply beautiful, best honeymoon destination in the world. And I felt a way, it kind of just affected me. So I dropped out of, I still continued, but I dropped out of logging what I was collecting just for that reason, because I kind of felt uncomfortable that I was, I felt to me like at will, I could win the award. But what I win the award for? I win an award for saying that my island is dirty, in a sense. So I wanted to get a lot more into the education of it and trying to stop the problem.
Preventing and reversing loss and degradation of ocean and marine ecosystems are essential to a sustainable ocean economy. Fisheries and tourism sectors directly and indirectly derive significant value from marine ecosystems. Continued growth of these sectors from marine ecosystems depend on the ability of governments to manage the ocean and marine resources sustainably. Policy instruments such as marine protected areas can benefit many sectors including tourism, fisheries, and aquaculture. OECS governments can develop financing mechanisms to both safeguard the ocean and marine resources and generate revenue for the conservation and sustainable use of the oceans, which include fees and charges for marine protected areas. Governments can also establish conservation trust funds. These are independent and private legal entities that can both generate finance and support efforts for the conservation and sustainable use of the oceans. Conservation trust funds are used to fund a broad range of projects including the management of protected areas, payments for ecosystem services, and other sustainable development activities. Governments play a central role in incentivizing the development of coastal areas and, as such, should take the lead in ensuring that these developments are resilient to the impacts of climate change. Increasing the resources available to developing countries for fisheries monitoring and management is also key to making fisheries sustainable and growing the ocean economy. Seafood processing is also an important industry. Millions of people, particularly women, are involved in artisanal fish processing. Measures that add value, such as certification, are seen to offer the greatest potential for increasing the socio-economic benefits from fishing, together with interventions to reduce post-harvest losses and to reduce bycatch. Growing the aquaculture sector in coastal areas is also an opportunity for developing countries to also grow the ocean economy and increase food security. However, this needs to be managed effectively to ensure that growth in this sector is not at the expense of coastal ecosystems. Pollution is the largest environmental cause of disease and premature death in the world today. In 2015, 1 in 6 deaths was linked to some sort of pollution, with 1.8 million deaths arising from water pollution alone, according to Landrigan 2017. Marine pollution may affect human health when people have direct contact with pollutants or eat marine life and products contaminated by heavy metals, long-lived and harmful chemicals and materials, persistent organic pollutants, and other toxins that accumulate in the food chain. Beaches and seafood polluted with microbes can make locals and visitors sick with illnesses such as stomach flu and gastroenteritis, skin rashes, pink eye, respiratory infections, meningitis, and hepatitis. Over the past 2 decades, the surge of marine life, which is being suffocated due to plastic ingestion, is staggering.
Our fishermen are also impacted. They lose gear such as nets and lines during heavy periods of rainfall or after storm surges or hurricanes. Now, when this gear is lost at sea, it is called ghost gear. And this ghost gear, it engages in something called ghost fishing, which is where the gear, the nets and the lines continue to fish or catch fish after they are lost. And this is extremely damaging to our marine environment because the fish that is caught cannot be retrieved because the gear is lost, and the fishermen will have no idea where the gear is afterwards. And when the fish is killed, it could cause a wide range of problems, including one, it could lead to more waterborne diseases because the more fish that are caught, the more fish that will die, and the more fish that will rot in that area. So they could lead to more waterborne diseases and more diseases to marine organisms. It also leads to loss of life, including what we are noticing now is there is an increased death of marine turtles when they are caught in these nets and lines because they are not able to surface to breathe. So there is an increased death, which reduces our already decreasing marine population.
The fishing sector is experiencing the significant impact from marine plastic pollution. Fishers have to repair or replace nets and other gear damaged by marine plastic, and they have to fix boats with foul propellers and rudders and block engine intakes. In addition, the time it takes fishers to fix their boats and gear and deal with catch contaminated by marine litter means less time for fishing. Ironically, fishers themselves are the source of much of the plastic that causes them the most harm. Modern fishing nets are generally made of nylon and other non-biodegradable plastics, and discarded, lost or abandoned fishing gear continues to catch both target and non-targeted species. By one estimate, 640,000 metric tons of fishing gear, or around 10% of global marine litter, are lost at sea each year. The last 20 years have seen a tremendous upsurge in environmental awareness, which culminated in 2015 with the adoption of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and its 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Yet, all of this cannot be achieved if the laws governing plastic manufacturing, recycling, and disposal are not amended in pursuit of the Sustainable Development Goals. The last 20 years have seen a tremendous upsurge in environmental awareness, which culminated in 2015 with the adoption of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and its 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Yet, all of this cannot be achieved if the laws governing plastic manufacturing, recycling, and disposal are not amended in pursuit of the SDGs.
Luckily for the Caribbean, the United Nations have come together to really help put in place measures to address some of those kinds of pollution. And you have the Cartagena Convention, which is one of the primary regional conventions that seek to establish a mechanism whereby we not only address issues of marine pollution, but also land-based sources of marine pollution. How do you deal with that waste? Taking into consideration that 80% of the waste entering the marine environment originates on land. So the Cartagena Convention, specifically the land-based protocol, seeks to deal with that sort of problem. Then you also have things like the MARPOL Convention, which limits the amount of waste that can be disposed of in the marine environment. Now, as far as I'm aware, all countries of the region have signed on to the MARPOL Convention. There are about 2 countries of the region, let's say of the OECS in particular, that have yet to ratify the LBS protocol, right? So there are pieces of legislation. More importantly, at the national level, right, we have several pieces of legislation, but those legislation, they're kind of dated. And so, for instance, in St. Lucia, since 2014, we've had a draft environmental bill that seeks to address this issue of pollution, but it's still in draft form and it's languishing on the desk someplace. What we need to do as countries is come together individually, but also more importantly as a regional entity to lobby for more changes to be made at the international level, right, to address the serious problems as far as not just only the amount of plastic that is being manufactured, but also in terms of the content of those plastic items. Because a lot of those items, they just can't be recycled. But if they were manufactured differently, then there are possibilities that we could then embark on recycling initiatives that would make them a lot more viable.
Some governments in the region have made simple yet significant strides at pausing the pollution tide. In Antigua and Barbuda, for example, bags distributed by supermarkets accounted for 90% of all plastic waste. By banning styrofoam, plastic bags, and other single-use food service items, the proportion of plastic at the landfill dropped from 19.5% in 2006 to 4.4% in 2017. The ban on plastic bags occurred in two phases. The first banned the importation of plastic shopping bags, while the second banned use of the bag. Massey Supermarket has adopted a similar strategy at corporately reducing single-use plastics.
We saw the impact of the single-use plastic bags were having on the environment. And so right across the region throughout Massey, wherever Massey subsidiary existed in the food retail business, we made a decision that we would move to reusable plastic bags. That decision was actually unsolicited. We just thought that it lined up well with our vision of being a force for good, and that if no one else would take care of our environment, we as a private sector had to take that step to do something that was genuinely beneficial to the environment. Backlash was many, but I think when you're in this line of business, you have to understand that change doesn't come easy. Customers and even institutions resisted and resisted vehemently. But the good thing about leadership, over the years you gather a certain amount of wisdom to see the end before you actually get there. And we knew that it was something that each and every one of us would be very, very proud of in the end. I have seen the efforts of a lot of other private sector organizations, particularly in the supermarket and business, who have pushed the use of single-use plastics. In St. Vincent, in St. Lucia, we supported Joakali, where they moved tons and tons of waste out of the environment, bottles, cans, plastics. And the Replast project, where we had a 10-month program with them, costing I think over $50,000, and the excitement from the customers every Saturday, Sunday, or whatever, you would see them coming in and bringing their pet-worn plastics. And we have collected through Replast thousands of those bottles.
As of 2017, globally, over 1 million plastic beverage bottles were purchased every minute, according to data from Euromonitor International's Global Packaging Trends Report, published by The Guardian. The plastic bottle's journey from convenience to curse has played out quickly in a single generation. Plastic bottles and bottle caps rank as the third and fourth most collected plastic trash items in the Ocean Conservancy annual September beach cleanup in more than 100 countries. Heineken St. Lucia are bottlers of the widest assortment of locally produced beverages packaged in single-use plastic containers.
Food and beverage packages are an important part of our lives today, but we are clear that we play a big role in the problem that the world is facing right now when it comes to waste. We are part of the problem, we take full responsibility for that, and our commitment is to be part of the solution so that our packaging does not end up where it does not belong. So we have supported many local initiatives around the collection of PET, both financially and otherwise. However, admittedly, we recognize that collection is just one part of the issue. So last year, we partnered with Replas for the first time to support an initiative that not just collected, but closed the loop on recycling. Coca-Cola has World Without Waste. We focus on efforts in 3 main pillars. New packaging design, that's focused on returnability, recyclability, lightening and use of recycled material. The second is collection, and the third is engagement with communities, governments, NGOs, local partners, customers, consumers, because we all want to achieve a higher rate. So we seek to share the best practices to help build what we think is a more effective collection and recycling systems that are efficient to each community. That said, we believe that plastic waste management is a collective responsibility. We continue to lead conversation with government in advocating for the establishment of deposit systems on island. Amendments to laws without the relevant or complementary efforts to shift the behavior and the mindset of citizens and consumers towards plastic waste is futile. Our company is only one stakeholder, so we must seek a 360 engagement with all parties.
The Replas OECS project aims to support the development and implementation of a Caribbean-wide plastic waste collection and recycling system through a pilot cooperation approach between St. Lucia and the OECS Commission and the wider Caribbean. The project aims to achieve the following 4 outcomes. 1. An end-to-end flow for the collection and management of plastic waste involving public, private and local stakeholders is set up and is operational in St. Lucia. 2. Used plastic bottles from St. Lucia are exported to the Caribbean recycling facilities in the circular economy approach. 3. The population of St. Lucia is aware of the ecological issues surrounding managing and selectively sorting recyclable waste. 4. Other territories in the Eastern Caribbean are ready to replicate the pilot action undertaken between St. Lucia and the recycling facilities within the Caribbean basin.
Today, if you would walk on the streets, you would actually see persons just throwing bottles out of vehicles. I mean, this is something that I see every day and quarrel about it every day. But I mean, as persons throw bottles out, there was nothing really coming from it. But when the project came on board, persons realized, look, instead of me throwing my waste and getting it to the landfill where it's going to be go back into the ocean or something, they decide, you know what, let us just collect that and get something for it. The project started in 4 areas in St. Lucia: Grosile, Castries, Vieux-Fort and Labrie. And when we started off, persons in the Grosile region were the ones who were actually coming to us, because Grosile was launched as the first RCP. And when we started, we found persons from around the north: Barbono, Grand Riviere, Grosile proper, Cap Estate, Bonte. But as time went by and the other RCPs opened up, we got more persons coming in from the north. I would like to urge all St. Lucians, or as many as possible, to come on board and register with the Replas project. It's not difficult to do. All you do is you go online once you have an electronic device, www.replasoecs.com. You register online. When you come into the Replas collection point, after you go to health and safety, we send you to registration where you would be issued for a Replas card. This is the card where you generate your points, and you can go on the same website, replasoecs.com, and redeem those points on our marketplace. Over the past few months since Replas has been in existence, we have collected over 26,000 pounds of plastic, which has been sent to the collectors, and they have build those plastics and they're being shipped to Honduras. At one time, when you would pass through Moshi, you would see plastic bottles along the road. Since Replas started, when you walk through Moshi, it's difficult for me, because I'm a volunteer as well, I'm going to try to get plastics to redeem. But it's difficult for me to actually get plastics because persons pass before me and collect. Back in the day, you would have a bottle and you would say, okay, I drank my water, so let me get rid of that. And somebody would be there to pick it up. Hey, can I get that bottle for collection? So persons who know about the project are actually taking part in it, and it's really, really making us happy that persons actually grasp that concept and they're really trying to better our community and our environment.
Safeguarding clean oceans is a truly rhetorical discourse. Humanity simply cannot live without clean oceans, and the tide is quickly turning on many small island developing states to throw a lifeline to the escalating problem. The World Bank, in a recent study, presented a 12-point action plan for combating marine pollution in the region, with an acute focus on plastic pollution. Number 1, it said, to improve the knowledge base on marine population and water quality throughout the region using common monitoring approaches and guidelines. 2, step up assessment of the economic impacts of marine pollution and quantify the cost associated with pollution prevention and management, as well as the cost associated with doing nothing at all. Number 3, strengthen and harmonize existing national institutional structures, policies and legislation to effectively reinforce regional governance and align with international mandates and commitments. Number 4, integrate marine pollution prevention and control policies into the broader context of national policy and planning frameworks. Number 5, heighten local expertise and technical capacity concerning pollution and water quality management. 6, raise public awareness on the importance of water quality and marine ecosystems to reduce behavioral change. 7, strengthen multi-sectoral mechanisms and establish partnerships to address marine pollution. 8, prioritize, dedicate and increase funding within local national budgets for marine pollution prevention and control. Number 9, make a strategic investment commitment to litter control. Number 10, make a decisive commitment to reduce consumption of common and persistent litter items, including plastics. Number 11, implement integrated high-priority interventions to reduce discharge of untreated sewage and nutrients and promote resource recovery of wastewater. And number 12, improve chemical and industrial pollution controls through targeted and cost-effective measures in priority issues. Time, effective governance, amendments to laws, public awareness, behavioral change, re-engineering of manufacturing processes, expansion in recycling, and simple cleanup campaigns can ensure our children enjoy the ocean the way it was meant to be. Clean,